For a little background on me, I'm a writer for TechCrunch. I've been there for about 2.5 years. Before that, I was studying at Stanford, doing a master's in cyber sociology, so studying how humans interact over the internet. And since being in TechCrunch, I've covered a lot of social networks, but then also a lot around crowdfunding and startups. And I'm really interested to hear a lot about how crowdfunding is changing the market for how startups get off the ground, specifically for wearables. So why don't you tell us, how does a company know if crowdfunding is right for them?
Sure. So, since we started Indiegogo back in 2008, the word crowdfunding actually didn't exist back then, but the industry has evolved a lot. So in the beginning, when we launched, we were really launching as a platform to empower people to fund what matters to them, whatever that is. We saw that finance was riddled with gatekeepers, and therefore asset allocation and capital allocation was really inefficient, and as a result of that, incredibly unfair. So ideas were not going born. There are millions of ideas not going born every day simply for this lack of access to efficient capital. So when we started Indiegogo, we created this open ecosystem for all ideas to have an opportunity to at least try and get their idea off the ground. Fast forward 6 years, we've been grown to millions of dollars every single week. We're distributing money all across the world, every industry, entrepreneurs, creatives, charities, you name it. People are funding these ideas, and it's incredible. And so for entrepreneurs today, what Indiegogo has become is not just a place to access capital if you've been traditionally locked out of capital, which is kind of where we began. So for example, if you couldn't get a bank loan or venture capitalists would call you back, Indiegogo's been that place where you go on and raise money and actually prove that you've got a market. We actually had a campaign out of London called Gravity Light, which it was an interesting product where 30 seconds of lifting created 30 minutes of energy. And brilliant idea. He saw it as an alternative in the developing world to kerosene, which was both dangerous and expensive. And so he went to the venture world to ask for money to help him prototype this and bring it to market. And they said, sounds like a brilliant idea, but we have no idea if there's a market for this. So instead, he went on Indiegogo, raised $400,000, and instantly, by the time his campaign had ended, he still hadn't prototyped it, but just the proof point in raising that amount of money from thousands of people proved that there was a market. And so those venture capitalists then came in and were interested in investing. So Indiegogo has now become this incubation platform, but what's also happened, which I think is the really interesting thing, is that it's becoming a way for entrepreneurs to build the confidence that they've actually got something that the world wants. So what I mean by that is that even venture-backed entrepreneurs now with products and wearables are now using Indiegogo as a way to really refine their product market fit. So what I mean by that is when you launch a campaign and you set your funding target and you offer different perks for your product, you can actually use the campaign experience to get smarter faster. And what I mean by that is you can offer your product at certain price points, and once they sell out, you can offer the exact same product, for example, at a higher price point, and really test the willingness to pay. You can also test features, you can test colors, you can test use cases. We give you a ton of referral analytics on the back end, so you not only know where traffic is coming and who's converting into funding, but you also know which individuals and outlets are actually driving the most traffic as well as dollars.
So that was how to use Indiegogo for dummies in like 2 minutes, but like let's try unpacking that a little bit so people can break down what the actionable insights from all of that is. So specifically, if a young company is trying to figure out if they should take crowdfunding or if they should go to VCs, does doing a crowdfunding campaign hurt their chances of getting VC because VCs want to be in really early at the seed round stage?
No, but the capital you raise in Indiegogo is non-dilutive capital, so you're not giving up any equity right now. But it actually, I think, helps your chances of getting venture, because what you're doing is you're learning a lot about who your customers are, where they are, how much they're willing to pay, what features they want, what use cases they want. So you actually are equipped with a lot more data than you would be when you just have an idea and a promise of a market. And so actually venture investors are getting more and more interested in, we're actually now hearing from venture investors say, I love this idea when they get pitched by an entrepreneur, but go run an Indiegogo campaign, prove you have a market, prove you got good product market fit, and then come back and talk to us, and we'll be here to help amplify it further.
So have you seen big companies that are getting acquired out of Indiegogo?
There's a lot of companies that go on and merge with other companies or raise more additional capital to grow. I think it's incredibly exciting because, like I said, what's happening is it's creating this incubation platform for more ideas to get off the ground and validate themselves through their own merit versus being, being validated by just one gatekeeper. Which what's interesting is that as crowdfunding becomes a more and more common approach to raise money, what's happening is cash is now becoming a commodity. So what I mean by that is now you can go to the crowd to get money, or you can go to venture to get money. So which way you're going to do it? Well, what it means is that each sources of cash are going to have to add value on top of just being a provider of cash. No longer can venture investors just rest on their laurels and say, I've got the money, come pitch me. They actually have to come back and pitch you and say, I can add value, I've got the relationships, which is good. I think it'll make the whole ecosystem stronger. What they can't offer is what the crowd offers, which is the market validation, the market feedback. The amount of data you get in an Indiegogo campaign beats any data you could ever get from a focus group, by far. And it's much more accurate.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating, that the companies can come in and they can find out what works and what people want without actually having to dilute themselves and give up any equity early. But you're talking a little bit about validation, and that's something I'm really fascinated about with crowdfunding platforms. The question is kind of, are crowdfunding platforms like Indiegogo and Kickstarter kind of just snake oil markets, where people can put up dubious claims and say that they can build something that they really can't, and they end up taking $1 billion in funding from people and deliver something far inferior to what they said they were going to build, or maybe never even really ship anything. How do you guys handle this? Because recently there was a big scandal because Indiegogo had a campaign from a company called Healbee. The Healbee Gobi was a medical device that claimed that it could track caloric intake just through like a wearable wristband. And tracking how much food I put into my body by something that goes on my wrist seems a little bit crazy, and some doctors even said so. But you guys allowed the campaign to continue. It completed its campaign and raised over $1 million. And in the meantime, you guys changed your fraud policy to say that you catch any and all fraud, to say that you review everything for fraud but can't necessarily catch them. So how can people trust these crowdfunding marketplaces if the marketplaces themselves have no assurance that people are going to get what they say they're going to get?
So it's a great question. And so what Indiegogo's been doing since the beginning is continually refining our trust and safety system. So we have when we started Indiegogo, we believed at our core in being open. And we wanted to be the YouTube of funding. We did not want to judge people up front based on the quality of their idea. If we did that, we would just become the gatekeeper ourselves. And we wouldn't be changing finance whatsoever. We'd just be replacing it with a new version of the same old model. And so from the beginning, we've pioneered the open approach to crowdfunding since 2008. And we've continued to refine and build on our trust and safety protocol. So every campaign does get reviewed based on the level of review that it needs. And we use a combination of customer-driven algorithms and operational processes to vet out and make sure that everything that is coming up is valid and legit. So
I don't know, that's like operational policies and stuff. Like, how do you actually investigate these companies? Like, if somebody says, I build a jetpack that lets you fly. Like, how do you go look into it and say, like, this actually works and this is actually safe? Like,
well, this is what funding is. We're funding innovation, remember? And we also we need to remember that when ideas are coming out, we all know the entrepreneurial journey. Not everything goes according to plan, and so what we've done is create a communication system where people can show how they're innovating. 100 years ago or 200 years ago, if someone said, I'm going to be able to talk to somebody in a different continent, somebody would have said, you're crazy, that's impossible. How do you do that? Well, someone figured out how the phone works, and now we have internet and Gmail. So
but
innovation is constant, and so you have to, what we do is we make sure we don't judge. I mean, there's scientists disagreeing all the time. You have people with different opinions, and that's the beauty. You want that open ecosystem where people can debate, and that is what drives innovation forward.
I mean, I'm all for funding innovation. I'm not all for funding jetpacks that either never leave the ground or explode once they're in the air. And you know, it's well and good to talk about that, like, oh, you know, 100 years ago, wouldn't you have wanted to fund, you know, the telephone or something? But it's different because back then, the companies that were funding these innovations were big companies that had a lot of people doing their due diligence research. You're putting these campaigns up and allowing people to just fund them without necessarily, like, these are random people. They don't have access to the research means to be able to actually vet some of these claims.
The crowd includes a lot of people. It actually includes more researchers potentially than what can be in-house inside of a company. So,
but when they're only putting up $100 instead of putting up $100,000, there's a lot less incentive for any one of them to do all the research and properly vet any of these companies.
Well, that's the power of bringing the crowd out and letting the conversation and the communication to happen and people to do their own due diligence that they want. We don't force anybody to fund anything.
I'm saying this because, you know, there's people in the crowd who are building really amazing devices, and they probably have competitors who say that they're building things that are just as good that aren't. And, you know, I'm trying to help these people to be able to make sure that the ones who are actually building something that works are the ones that are getting the funding and not these sort of shamsters. And so,
how do you know, though? You're just one person. So that's
my argument, is that how can any one person who's crowdfunding these campaigns know if they're just one person?
Because there's an open communication system around everything. So the point of this is we're unlocking innovation. A great example, we have a campaign on Indiegogo right now, Solar Roadways. They've raised nearly $2 million. It's 2 engineers that came out of Idaho. They didn't come from the big research institutions of Harvard and Stanford. It's just 2 engineers who've been plugging away for 10 years, okay? They went on Indiegogo, they've told their story, they've shown everything they've done to date, and it is something that the world really wants to see happen. And now it's, you know, 200 media outlets across the world, they've had millions of views. It's growing, and it's all from them just showing their traction, showing what they've done, showing their execution, and showing their vision. And so what the funding process is it's allowing people who've been locked out of this innovation or locked out of the ability to you know, work within companies themselves and actually be part of something. And so again, it's all, what I think the innovation going forward will be around ensuring that the communication and as much information is shared as possible for people to make their best decision themselves.
Do you often see like comments being like, hey, I did a ton of research and here's all the reasons why this is impossible and other people shouldn't fund it? And do those comments dissuade people?
It definitely sparks a conversation. It's a conversation that should be had.
Okay, so just to be clear, your end sort of position on this is the crowd will handle the vetting and you guys don't have to?
The crowd, which includes a lot of different people, and we create the platform. We do the vetting on the back end to make sure companies are legit and they are who they say they are, but we will not get involved in the science. We will not get involved in taking on the role of what many people out there in the world are better at taking on, which is people who worked in different industries, different science, you know, whatever. They can bring it forward.
I mean, you guys allowed the Go Be He'll Be, even though...
Yeah, we got an incredible amount of support from that. A lot of people really resonated for how strongly we supported our campaign owners.
You guys
for standing behind them and allowing them to prove innovation and actually prove science can move forward.
But you said that you make sure to check that they say they are who they say they are, and they said that they were a San Francisco-based company, but they're actually based in Moscow.
We've communicated with the team, and they have team members all over the world.
Okay, so let's move forward to once you're starting a crowdfunding campaign. I want people in the audience to know, like, what are the major pitfalls? Like, what are the things that people do that basically crater their campaigns that people should avoid?
So one of the big mistakes that a lot of campaign owners make is they think that the idea will speak for themselves. And so the power of crowdfunding is that, you know, we're moving to an age of transparency where people want to know the story behind the story. It's how we make decisions. And so the most successful campaigns that we see on Indiegogo are the ones that put a lot of energy and effort into crafting an incredible pitch and campaign, which is not just talking about the product, but also telling the story behind the story. So why are they so personally passionate about bringing this idea to life? I think people who approach campaigning more as an advertisement lose that connection that you can make with people, because ultimately what we're doing is we're bringing authenticity back to finance. We're allowing people to fund individual ideas, individual people, and if you don't embrace that expectation, you'll probably leave money on the table. The second key to success is making sure that you're proactive. So don't approach crowdfunding as like a field of dreams. This is a marketing effort, a market research effort, a market testing effort, as much as it is a fundraising effort. So you definitely want to have your ducks in a row around what you're trying to learn, who you're trying to reach, and test all those hypotheses that we learned in startup methodology. Use Indiegogo as a way to test all those, so that you really end it with not just funds, but also a much greater understanding of who your customers are, where they are, and what their willingness to pay is, and where their interests are.
So you have some stats about some best practices, things that, when you add them, then they increase your likelihood, or they increase your contributions. Could you run through a few of those for us?
Say that again?
Could you run through a few of the sort of best practices, things like for instance, sending updates to people in your campaign like every 3 to 5 days. That's a really great way to make sure that your contributions increase, right?
So campaigns that, like you mentioned, campaigns that do updates every 1 to 5 days raise on average over 200% more than campaigns that don't. Again, this is a communication, this is an engagement process. Talk to your funders like you talk to your teammates. Invite them into the process. The second thing is campaigns with a video raise on average 115% more than campaigns without. So Indiegogo is very flexible. We don't force you to do a lot of things, but we share this data with you so you can make your best decision. Another thing is campaigns with a team raise on average 90% more than campaigns run by one person. I think this helps on the trust factor, so that people know that you've got a whole effort going and that you've got a team moving forward.
And you can't just like move to Hawaii with all their money.
Yeah, what's interesting about crowdfunding and Indiegogo is that we've got a lot of the best practices that all the payments company has on the back end from the fraud stuff, and we've actually layered in our own proprietary system. We've been a data-driven company since the beginning, so we've used data as a way to ensure that our platform's incredibly safe as well as merit-driven, and so ideas rise to the top based on what we call our GoGo factor, which is like our Google PageRank algorithm. It's an algorithm that measures the activity of a campaign and the responsiveness of the community. And so the harder you work and the more your community engages, the higher your GoGo factor, and then the more placement and promotion you get on the site. And so it's all the same factors that go into raising money, but it's our way of keeping a very merit-based system, so that if you're working hard and doing everything right, the power, your destiny and success is in your hands. It's not in ours. So another example of something to do is make sure that when you launch a campaign, if there's any question marks you have around specific features or specific price points, use the perk swapping functionality that we offer to really test that and be transparent about that. Say, we're trying to figure out what it is that people want to pay for this. And so one of the unique things on Indiegogo is you can actually swap perks in and out mid-campaign to really see what people's interests are. And we give you all the data on the back end so you can fulfill everything.
That's pretty cool, because I mean, you can put up, say you devise like a wearable headset, for instance. You could put it up for $200 and see that you're not really getting that many clicks into it or a lot of contributions at that level, and then you could swap it out and try it at $150 and see, oh, that's the price point where suddenly we're getting all this interest, lots of people are contributing, and then you might know that when you go to market, being in a sub $200 price point is really important for you to gain traction.
And also, we had a campaign that came out of Australia that they launched a product. It was actually a $20 product, so a very low-end product. But on their data on the back end, they saw that the willingness to pay in Australia was much higher than in the US. And so people in the US were willing to fund the product when it was at a $10 or $15 price point, but Australians were much more willing to pay $20. Maybe that had something to do with this Australian dollar being a lot stronger than the US dollar, and so...
or people just want to support innovators in their home country.
It could be a combination of both, but they had equal funding from both countries. And so they used this data to then go to advertisers that they were talking to, and they knew exactly how much they're going to have to spend to drive a certain amount of traffic that would convert into a certain amount of dollars.
So Indiegogo doesn't require you to raise all of your target goal money to be able to get the money. You get whatever money is contributed to you as long as you use the settings right.
We have two options. So on Indiegogo we have flex funding and fixed funding. Flex funding is the model where you set your funding target and you get your money whether or not you reach your goal. Fixed funding is the model where you set your target and you get your money only if you reach your goal.
Like Kickstarter.
It's similar in that, well no, there's a very big difference. On Indiegogo we have no leakage because we use a transaction model versus a pledge model. So the difference being on Indiegogo, when somebody funds a fixed campaign, dollars leave their account and it's held. And only if they don't reach their goal, then the dollars are refunded, versus in the pledge system, it's a promise, and so if credit cards change or people cancel their funding last minute, it can affect the results. And so for that reason, a lot of people who want to use the fixed system choose Indiegogo because of that transparency, and it's much more fair for the campaign owners and the funders.
You guys charge 9%. That's like what you guys take in terms of contribution.
We take 4% when the funds, when you raise your money and you reach your funding target in both fixed and flex funding. In fixed funding, if you don't reach your target, the money goes back to the customers and no fees at all, so it's free. And then in flex funding, if you don't reach your target, then the fee is 9%. And we did a lot of A/B testing around this. And actually found that having a slightly higher price point helps campaign owners reach their targets more. And so we actually drive success by that.
Great, so I think looking at your own crowdfund campaigns, realize that you can crowdfund even if you think you're going to raise VC later, if you want to be acquired later, or if you just want to figure it out later, just make sure to be transparent about it. Using a video, doing frequent updates, having a team behind you, all increase your likelihood of raising money.
The last thing I would say, and I guess this is also another big mistake that a lot of campaign owners make. A lot of campaigners go on there and they ask for money. And I know it doesn't sound intuitive, but don't. This is not charity, especially for this audience. This is an opportunity to actually invite your community into the ideation and creation process, a process that most of us are locked out of because we're not as innovative or technology forward as you guys. So, and if we are interested, it's a way for us to lend our skills and our knowledge without fully jumping in. And so, campaign owners that approach Indiegogo as an invitation process and a community building process do far better than campaigners that say, I just need money and please give it to me. People want to be part of cool things. There's actually 4 reasons people fund anything on Indiegogo. Our research shows this and all the data shows this. We call them the 4 Ps to make it easy to remember so that when you're crafting your campaigns, you can think about your funder from this perspective. The first P is people. So people fund people. They don't just fund ideas, they fund people. So that's why it's so important to put you into the video and talk not just about what you're doing, but why you're doing it and what's the big impact you're trying to make on this world and what problem you're trying to solve. The second P is project and passion. So they have to love what you're actually doing. The third P is participation. So this is the option to actually be part of something bigger than yourself. If you're working a day job and you think this technology is really cool and you want to contribute to it, but you can't quit that day job to go full steam, here's how you can stay involved and help. And then the 4th P is the purpose. They want the actual P. The 5th P that will arise soon will be profit, which is to the gentleman's question at the beginning, will come when equity crowdfunding is fully launched. And that's something we're very excited about. When I started Indiegogo, I wanted to democratize investing. SEC laws made it prohibitive when we took it online, and so we parked that. We ended up partnering with the US government and Startup America, and Jobs Act passed because of our case studies and all the campaigns using Indiegogo. And so we're just waiting to figure out what the final regulations are and then figure out what makes sense to our customers who really want equity crowdfunding as well.
So if all the crowdfunding stuff goes through and non-accredited investors, just like anybody, can invest in exchange for equity, Indiegogo wants to offer that?
We're very interested. It's philosophically and ethically it makes sense for us. We want to empower people to fund what matters to them, whatever that is, however that is, wherever that is. And so it's just a matter of us hearing what the regulations are and then figuring how to solve for that and provide the best customer experience with it.
Well, I hope that if you guys get into that direction that you look really deeply at how you're handling fraud stuff, because obviously if people think that they're going to possibly make a profit by investing in one of these companies because it's going to get big later, it's going to become even more important that they know that what they're investing in is real and they're not getting shammed. So.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the reason the Jobs Act passed, the big question mark was around risk, and so we were there in DC walking them through all of our fraud algorithms and all that, and that's what actually helped the law pass. So unfortunately I can't share all of our details with you guys, because if we did, then the fraudsters would take advantage of that. But we're ahead of the game in this, and we'll continue to, because we'll have to continue to iterate in this space. And again, it's something we're doing not because of the law or whatever, it's because we want to create the safest environment, and we want to make sure we maintain our open system, because the last thing we want to do is become a gatekeeper. Otherwise, we're not changing finance at all.
I would say that instead of the last thing you want to do is be a gatekeeper is wanting to fraud people. So I would definitely look at that, because that to me seems like the real issue here. And that if you're saying that the crowd is the one who has to vet these things, leaving it up to like a mob and always assuming that somebody else is going to handle the vetting, and it could be really problematic. So
we have a lot of systems on the back end that take care of a lot of this stuff, so that there's things that you guys don't see on Indiegogo that we've already pulled because of all of that.
Fraud, an evolving issue with crowdfunding for startups. Thank you very much for coming and talking with us today. Thanks you guys for watching.